And it's day one of our haul out.
Spewing.
Yeah, I'm spewing a little bit, to be honest.
The anode on the rudder is completely gone. There's actually quite a lot of rust on the keel, which is where we hit bottom when we went to the reef.
And because of the weather that we've got around at the moment, it's no good me exposing lots of steel, and because it's just going to suck in moisture.
It's not ideal conditions for what you want to do.
Yeah. Then a whole bunch of other stuff happening from there.
In a very limited space.
In a very limited space, absolutely.
We don't regret it, because otherwise we wouldn't have known that we liked sailing otherwise.
This is just like one of the most generous communities we've ever been a part of. It's amazing. Doing a good job, babe.
Thank you. You guys are too. Unusual.
You can find out.
It's time to bust out those threadbare work pants. We're hauling out. We've got just days to get our steel Adams 35 shipshape for a second year of cruising. DIY, on a budget, and accepting all the help we can get. The kicker, it's peak wet season right now.
And thankfully the rain has cleared as well.
The rain, in fact, does not clear. And when your boat's made of steel, that means it's a race against rust and antifoul working times. If the sun won't shine, we'll have to bring our own. Join us over these next few episodes as we make the best of a bad situation. But hey, that's boat life, and isn't it glamorous?
It's just after 8 a.m. Josh is just taking the sea kayak over to the boat because it's moored up in the river there. I'm going to stay on land and film the haul out itself. It's a little bit different from our first haul out. It's on a, what's the system called? It's not a travel lift. I'll put it here. It was this time yesterday we actually arrived to haul out, but it was raining and it was really windy. So the lovely gentleman Mick that works at this boatyard said that we could move it till tomorrow, which is today. So at our last haul out, they hauled us out of the water with a sling, and I've never actually seen this contraption before, but I think this is like the old school style, but it doesn't mean that it's not effective, so it'll be cool to see how this works. And because of all the rain that we had last night and the night before, there's a lot of fresh water coming out through the river. This river system goes all the way up into Lismore. If you're familiar, we had some pretty gnarly floods about 2 years ago, like absolutely devastating floods, and all of that water came out through this river. So it's very susceptible to dramatic tidal changes depending on how much fresh water there is in the river. So because of all this fresh water that's coming out through the river from all the rain that we have up there, it means that we're on a little bit of a tight schedule.
Spewing.
Yeah, I'm spewing a little bit, to be honest, because we put so much time and effort in last year.
That took most time out of anything really.
And I knew that it was on the list that I needed to test for electrolysis on the hull, because that was kind of our idea after hauling out with all those blisters, but we never prioritised it and I never got around to it. So now we're back here and starting again.
Is that Gav? Gav!
Hey, Gav.
young man. The pressure washing is going really well. It's actually not as much blistering as we were expecting, and not as much blistering as we had last year too, although the anode on the rudder is completely gone. So yeah, once he's finished all the pressure washing, we'll have like a better inspection and then work out how we're going to go about this.
Blistering again on the hull. So I think we've definitely got electrolysis on the hull somewhere, because the anodes are working but they're not completely gone. But yeah, it's not as bad as last time, but I'll probably have to, do a little bit of rust. Well, I'm tempted, because I need to fix the electrolysis, but to track it I need to be in the water. So I'm kind of tempted to just antifoul over it again and then fix the issue, and then do any major rust treatment on the next haul out, and then
At some point, and I don't know when it was last done, or you'll have to work it out, you'll have to get it wet blasted back and start again. Not necessarily, the little blisters being the electrolysis. It's the fact that you've got so much anti-fouling on there that it I have a similar issue in that, if you really want to go back, you've got to just take it back to bare metal. But, you're the man to find out if you've got electrolysis, as you say, to find out.
Yeah. I need to be in the water to do that, though, I've found out. So that was it was on my list of things to do last year that I never got to.
Yeah, and it's very hard to have electrolysis, whenever you're with other boats and around the marina, is what I've understood it to be.
Yeah, fully. I think that was definitely the case more so in Ballina, because it's not as bad as it was last time, but it's still present.
As you know from when you were up before, to get it sandblasted costs a fortune, and to do whatever. So, in a year or two or three, you might have to come back and blast it, because the more anti-fouling you put on, eventually it gets to the point where it has to go back to metal.
Yeah, okay. And because of the weather that we've got around at the moment, it's no good me exposing lots of steel, and because it's just going to suck in moisture.
It's not ideal conditions for what you want to do.
Yeah. I'm gonna prep the hull, take it all back. I'm gonna cut my old anode studs off and weld new ones on there, because I think that they're really, like, the thread on them's buggered and all that sort of stuff. And then all the through hull fittings, ball valves, and then anti-foul, and then
you need to be able to then patch up the paint that blisters off.
Yeah.
Or the other option is, if you're there when they do it, is you get a wet, damp rag and hold against it.
Around the outside?
No,
inside.
The inside.
Yeah.
You need to be able to put a damp rag there after you cut them off, where you find out where they are.
Cool.
And then he can weld the new ones on, because it'll get so hot on the inside it'll just blister the paint, and then you'll expose the steel again.
Yeah, and they'll rust from the inside. Okay.
The ones that are on the keel you can't do anything about, but that's encapsulated anyway.
There's actually quite a lot of bare steel exposed, hey?
Sure is.
Wow. So that's where we hit the reef. That actually doesn't look so bad. Not as bad as I was expecting. You're exactly right. It's going to be exactly what we did last time. Yeah. At least we've got that tungsten carbide grinder this time, make it easier.
With a merciful break in the rain, I'm scraping off any large flakes of paint to prepare for sanding. Regretfully, we had to make the call early on not to do any major hull work today, as the bomb radar showed ominous rains approaching. So instead, we're doing the finicky jobs now, so that if by the grace of the gods we have a sunny day tomorrow, we can jump straight into a full day of sanding and priming the hull.
The starboard side is far worse than the port. So we've obviously got a stray electrical current somewhere. It's blasting all the primer and the paint off. You can kind of see the steel glistening in the sun. Yeah, not good.
With only 5 penetrations in the hull, each through hull services multiple sources. The age of the seacocks and skin fittings are unknown, so we're giving them a freshen up. We're installing a glass reinforced nylon composite style. The inlet below the galley sink supplies raw water to the head,
washdown pump and inboard. Before anti-fouling, we need to remove all of this equipment to get a few coats of primer on the bare steel before installing the new gear. Pulled the door off because that makes things a lot easier. We're going to disconnect all the hose clamps now and then just pull the outlet hoses off, and then we can start unscrewing everything off that seacock. We kind of have to disassemble and then reassemble because it's all been put together in a way that it fits. There's one through hole fitting and then it comes off into a T-piece with two seacocks and then a whole bunch of other stuff happening from there. So if we...
In a very limited space.
In a very limited space, absolutely. So Gav's been on the heat gun and hopefully loosened all this up as much as possible. So this is our above the waterline bilge discharge, head and galley sink discharge. I admit Innerbloom's grey water and bilge system is not as simple as they can be. It has several components that work together to achieve a pretty simple task, getting water out of the boat. Our outlet sits right on the waterline when Innerbloom is at rest. Our galley sink drains into a purpose-built sump box. It has a screen to filter out large particles before the pump, which works off an auto float switch. The sole of the head and the anchor locker both drain into a box with the same setup. Each outlet from the sump box pump goes through a non-return valve, which then joins before meeting the seacock. Our dual bilge pump system works in a similar way. Sharing common lines for discharge is only made possible by these non-return valves, as it prevents each line from backfilling when another is pumping. It also stops water pushing in whilst heeled over, which happened to us last season in heavy winds when one failed on us.
I took him on his first sail, he probably regretted it now. He was seasick the whole time. You know the funniest thing about that day that I remember, Ruby?
What?
Is taking you over your first wave when you had the tiller. The swell was coming, and you stood up and let the tiller go. You thought the wave was going to smash into the cockpit. I said, no, it's gone under us, we've gone up us.
Boats, they float, they do that.
Yeah, I know, but the look on your face as you saw it coming, and then you just stood up and let it go.
Every man for himself.
Yeah, that's what you did, every person. But this shut should be welded shut, but it's not. When it can't, if it's fiberglass.
Could easily get a bit of gal pipe, that same thing.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly that size, and it has a sunken teepee, you know, it's recessed back so that this this part here gets pushed into it and sikaflex, and then you pull from the top, you thread it down and pull this up into the steel.
It's really looks like it's pushing. You know, it's in the small sections too, like it's really unusual.
But you can find out once you put it in the water.
As you can see, the handle has broken off of this Y valve, which sends water from the deck filler to either the forward tank or the bladder over the keel. So this rainy day has provided ample opportunity to replace it.
How you doing there?
Do you think it needs it? Oh, I already put that in there. I'm sorry. So flow would be like that, and then that would be open, and then if it's closed it goes down there.
Yeah, so it's open flowing through there, and then when you do it the other way, just double check that.
Yeah.
So do it. So hold it back the same way you just had it before, so you don't confuse yourself. Yep. And then look down it. Yep, perfect. So always, you got it.
This community is so amazing. We've had quite a few friends drop by today and that all have sailing experience, one of which was Tony, who was actually the first person that took us out on their sailboat. The first sailboat that we ever went onto was Tony's, and he's always had a lot of really positive input and information and experience to share with us, because obviously we're completely lacking in that. Anyway, he dropped by and he's had a few really great ideas for what we can do moving forward with our electrolysis issue and our anodes, but he also had a really good point about our through-hole fitting for the bilge and for the bilge discharge, and the sump box for the sink, and the sink and the head, which we don't really use, so we've kind of isolated that off. But he was saying that we could probably rewire, do you say rewire for plumbing? I don't know, replumb the lines instead of them going under the floorboards and going out to that through-hole fitting, that we could actually have it so that it goes under the floorboards through the engine bay and then out through the scuppers, because when we're on a starboard tack, wait, let me think about that. Yeah, when we're on a starboard tack, we were having that issue with where the bilge was really struggling to pump that water overboard, and that's where we're having all of our issues when we're under passage, and the bilge pump was really struggling to keep up with the amount of water that we were taking on.
And we're sailing to Beeswick.
St. Bees.
St. Bees. We've got probably about 15 knots of southwest wind at the minute, and we've got full sails up, so we are hooking. So we're having a bit of a challenging sail here at the moment. We've been taking on a little bit of water from somewhere. So there's water in the bilge. I'll show you how much is in there. Our discharge outlet is below the waterline at the moment, and our manual pump is just let go. Our anchor well drains into the sump box in the head and then pumps overboard from there. So it was pumping, because we were taking lots of waves over the bow, it was rushing down into that sump box, flooding that sump box because the sump box couldn't pump out, and then it was coming up through the drain hole in the head and then overflowing the head and then going into the bilge from there. Because our pumps are below the waterline, they're not able to pump out.
And that was mostly because the check valves had failed, they just weren't great, but also the bilge pump wasn't very strong, and it was also full of air. Regardless though, whenever we're having issues with that, we'll just have to isolate that through-hole fitting and just take on water and then pump it overboard once we're on anchor, or we just change tack and then, you know, pump it overboard. Yeah, he was saying that we could actually just get a Boilermaker to completely close off that hole, so it reduces the amount of holes that we have going into the boat, so we will be one less through-hole fitting, and then yeah, have it come through the scuppers. The only thing though is that, number one, if we're having that plumbing go past the engine bay, it might get really hot, so I don't know how that would work, because it does get really hot in there in the engine bay, but then also it'll probably make the cockpit really smelly, because the scuppers like already get really funky, and if we were on anchor for like more than 3 days and that stagnant seawater stays in there, it gets so stinky. But it's still really good to think about. That might be something that we look at doing next year. We'll just see like how often we're dealing with this issue with the through-hole fitting, with the one-way valve not being a one-way valve. So yeah, thought I'd get your opinion on it, and the next time we haul out we can consider it if we have those issues again. But anyways, it's really cool just hearing other people's perspectives, and obviously from people that are so experienced and have so much knowledge to share. This is just like one of the most generous communities we've ever been a part of. It's amazing. And I think there's also an element there too where people are so excited to share their experiences and their wisdom with us, especially because we're doing it so young, and they just kind of want to help us out and not make the mistakes that they did. So yeah, we'll definitely take Tony's advice on board.
So we're just cutting off our old studs that the anodes were attached to the boat. This is what the anodes look like by the time they came off in 12 months. So that is really significantly depleted from what it originally was at that size. I was going to put these back on, but after a bit of conversations with friends, we've gone with the idea to put on a bigger teardrop 2.2 kilo zinc. So what Jai's going to do for us is weld 2 bolts, new bolts, stainless bolts onto the hull that we're going to drill a hole and attach the new zincs onto. Yeah.
Could all of this paint loss be caused by poor connection between our anodes and the hull? The existing studs are made from mild steel, which has suffered significant metal loss from rust, making it impossible to get a firm connection between anode to hull with the nut. So, new studs are an easy fix, which can also help us rule out the possibility that poor anoding, is that a word? is the cause of the blisters.
I find with your electrode, sometimes you got to burn a little bit off the end when you're welding the stainless, because it's just, sometimes you can get porosity.
Good practice.
It just heats up your electrode and it just welds better.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Jai's almost finished the welding, and we're actually supposed to get quite a bit of rain on Sunday. It's Friday today, which sucks. So I'm gonna put a coat of primer on it once he's all finished everything, but I'm just gonna wait till he's done all of it because the primer sets really quickly, so I can't just do one coat and then wait till he's finished. We've got to do it all in one go. I'm using the same primer that we did. We're using the same primer that we did last haul out, which is just the epoxy primer. In the meantime, this is our new freezer. We're gonna have to make a few little adjustments in the area that it's seated in. So I've just marked up that we need to cut an extra 60 mil here, and then only like an extra 2 mil there, probably just with the renovator or something.
So as this underwhelming day comes to a close, we can't help but feel a little bit disappointed, to be honest. When we hauled out 12 months ago for the first time, our enthusiasm was equal to the task. It was exciting to uncover the truths held below the waterline, getting to see the full belly of our home for the first time. And April gifted us crisp air and blue skies that opened every day with the promise of productivity. We were so fortunate to be working in these conditions, removing any pressure of time from the already ambitious task. Time was a luxury for us, not a stressor. In fact, a double booking meant that we actually had to remain on the hard for more days than necessary. And although this was frustrating at the time, we look back now, as we often do with retrospection, wishing we appreciated what we had when we had it. Little did we know that the next time we hauled out, we would be working amid scattered storms and the impending fear that the rain would undo any progress made. But for now, we're grateful to soak in the company, the fresh air, and the last golden light of the day, because from here on out, it's nothing but grey skies and nervous glances at the radar. We'll see you next week.